Welcome back to Made Up of Wires. Adjusting the wrong mic, or wrong audio source. I wanted to turn down the music. Turn down myself instead. That's okay, the music's probably better than anything I'd ever say. What are we doing here? We're decompiling. What can we decompile? Have I said, I probably haven't used this before, but the Empire Strikes Back novelization. I think I picked that up at either a flea market or a garage sale or something like that. That's the kind of thing I like to do. Besides decompiling, pick up random things at strange places. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Getting back to the grind. I did something fun. Well, I did a couple things fun this weekend. Got to go camping, touch grass. It's cold at night, but getting out of the heat was nice. But in addition to that, on Friday, I was able to get the first weapon for the PSP decompiled and integrated into the build system, and we're gonna look at that a little bit. We looked at it on Thursday, but it's building and it's glorious. And I want to do another first, which is get the offhand weapons working as well. When I say offhand, weapons, you can have two weapons equipped in the game. If you're not familiar with Symphony of the Night or the Symphony of the Night decompilation project, go to soten.c.dev. Let me start all this normal roll as well. You'll find links to Discord and GitHub. I'm a contributor to the project. It's not my project. I just like decompiling. I like Symphony of the Night. I think it's one of the greatest games ever made, and you should too. If you like 2D platformers that have Metroidvania-esque elements, it's one of the best in the genre. Lots of people contribute to this project. It's about 3 dozen or so. I'm just one of them. And I thought I would do it live to get myself better at decompiling, but also kind of share some of this with as many people who want to learn along the way. So that's where you can go. Getting back to what I was talking about, in Symphony of the Night, for your item equips, you can equip things on your left hand or right hand if they're one-handed weapons, and you have the oh shoot, I want to get this right. The square and circle buttons for your left and right-handed attacks. If you think about, I have an Xbox controller here, not the same as a PlayStation controller, but it has the same layout as the PlayStation controller in terms of the buttons. And typically, you have these two buttons as I find the most natural to press, and the Super Nintendo kind of solidified that as like those are the action buttons. Often the jump button is down on the bottom. That's the X button or cross button on the PlayStation. And then you have your attack button, which is the square button. And so that's pretty typical. The circle button or the B button on the Xbox controller, which is the A button on the Super Nintendo controller. In Symphony of the Night, that is the offhand weapon. I find that to be a little more awkward to use, and so I tend to not use that as much in the game or any game, unless it's used for something. Hey, Roaming. Hey, good to have you. But it is an option, and so any one-handed weapon can be in either hand. There is a concept of a two-handed weapon, so some of the larger swords and other things like that take up both hand slots. I haven't looked too deeply into those and how they're implemented, so I can't tell you much about that. But then the other option is like shields, and that's pretty common. You have a sword in one hand, a shield in the other, and you can go between the two. Honestly, I probably have never used a shield in Symphony of the Night unless it's like the Medusa shield or one of the attack shields. That's just not the style of game that I typically play, but they're considered weapons as well. Let's see, I need to go find my branch. Your PSP weapon. So we're going to look at the offhand weapons, though, and see what those look like. What I want to see is... can I build an offhand weapon, and how different is it from... So we didn't do this at all on the PlayStation. So we don't know. Somebody probably knows, not me. I don't know. Can we build with the same source as the main hand weapon? And if so, how does that affect the rest of the game? So, like I said, we started this on Thursday, the weapon 0. So if it's W0, that means it's, I believe, a right-handed weapon. If it's W1, that's the left-handed weapon. So there is a weapon called the Shield Rod, and if you have... I don't remember the shield, but if you have the combination of the Shield Rod and a shield that I don't remember... Dragon Blitz does this frequently on his streams. The shield becomes effectively an attack shield, and you can just hold it in front of you. And so, like the Dracula fight becomes, at the end, becomes extremely easy because you are within the Dracula hitbox for the majority of the fight, and so you have your shield, and he's just continually taking damage. So that is definitely a strategy, and I'm not sure if it's a viable speedrun strategy, but it is useful in like races. I don't remember how, like, what the random drop rate and things like that is for those elements, or for those weapons, and if you can find them in known ways. I haven't really looked at like speedrun strategies, but that probably would be an interesting thing to look at as well. So we looked at the weapon, and it basically laid out, and it turned out, let's see if I can just do this. Never like how, oh, I didn't say get. Let me swap those. It turned out that the weapon code was effectively identical, and I could integrate it in, and this is the same weapon file that exists. It's changed slightly. There was a bunch of casting, and this may be an overflow, I'm not sure yet. But there was a bunch of things that needed to change to get this to compile. But many of those things compiled just fine in the PlayStation version, and I was actually able to get rid of... What did I get rid of? Find it. Yeah, in shared, we had some if-defs for specific weapons. Those could just go away, and everything worked fine. Like I said, I'm worried that this is an overflow, and I need to go check that out. But this compiles just fine on PSP and for every weapon, as opposed to this other version that had to be split between other weapons, and this as well. I'm not sure why this define ever existed for weapon 29. I haven't gone back and looked at the history, but it seemed completely unnecessary. And all of that works. This is an odd one too. We treat the color lookup table global as a two-dimensional array. This code does not treat it as a two-dimensional array. Hey Eldritch, good to have you back. So that is weapon 0 on the PSP. Let's look at the offhand version and see what we can find there. I'm expecting it to... My hope is, and this is just a hope, it might not work out this way, but my hope is that we can use the same code, and then we have to do a bunch of we'll see, shuffling maybe in either Splat supports this case or not. I'm not sure if Splat is going to support this case, what I want to be able to do is use the same code, change the define for what hand. So usually we have either left hand or right hand, and it's a 0 or a 1. And the hope is that otherwise the code is identical. And if so, then we need to be able to build this object basically with two different names. We need the left-hand name and the right-hand name, because the way the code is going to be compiled is slightly different, because that constant is going to get baked in. And right now, the way that the linker script and the build tools we control, so we could look at this and see it's a hand and it's the left hand. So I'm going to change what .o file gets output, but Splat generates a linker script to go along with that, and we would have to modify the linker script. I'm hoping that there's an option here that allows me to override what the name of this output is, but I'm not sure. It's something we're gonna have to look at. So I'm gonna use this as a starting point and copy it. Eldritch is saying, new file name cheat code to the game is incredibly easy, despite being a lot of MIPS instructions. Yeah, that's good to hear. Hey, Nate, good to have you back. I will be praying for you, Nate. I'm hoping you get the job. Are you on the outs with your brother? Or are you gonna still work with him? I was wondering what a fire investor was. A fire investigator makes a lot more sense. That's awesome. I hope you get it. It sounds like sounds super interesting as well. So we're going to try W01. There's a few things that I need to figure out. Yeah, that makes sense. It seemed like a far cry from fire investigation, but I'm glad you were able to get back into that. So I'm going to do the main setup stuff. I haven't gone through and updated make config yet to handle weapons. We haven't needed it for the other overlays, and for other versions of the game, it's a one-off. For the PSP, there's 115 of them. Hey, you guys, chat is one of the reasons I come back, and it's been great learning about people's lives along the way, learning, just communicating, having fun with everybody. So distract away. People are more important than games. People are more important than decompiling, and I decompile for people and for my own amusement. Okay, so we're going to create a symbols file. Interestingly, speaking of people, I am going to take a call. So we'll come back in a second. Sorry about that. There was a important doctor appointment in my life, and not for me, but for a loved one, and I just wanted to make sure everything worked out, and it turned out good. All right, so what I was saying is make config is we're gonna have 115-ish of these, 116 of these files for the PSP, so it would be nice to have make config do this for us. It's possible that the whole thing could be automated. The major difference that I found between the US and the PSP weapons is where the header sits. So in the US version, the header gets compiled in at the basically front of the file. So the file gets loaded and the known location is at offset 0 for the overlay header that has pointers to all the functions that the game needs to call. And on the PSP version, that structure is just, it's actually at the end of the data segment. I think it mostly doesn't matter because the way that the PSP loads this, it exports some symbols that can be read back, and one of those is called we call it weapon load. I called it weapon load. We call it load, overlay load in other contexts. And that ends up setting up all the pointer stuff. All right, so I'm gonna make a bunch of assumptions, and then we're going to get try to figure out what needs to change. So I set up the splat config. PSP stuff has another file called sim export. Sim export has, like I was saying, the symbols that need to be exported. So I'm going to open that. It's a little different than the other functions, and usually we don't touch this. It's just something that make config generates for us. And I think that's all I need. I'm not going to have some symbols. They should mostly come from other things. So let's run the SHA sum on this, and then I'm actually going to change the C file and data to point to a new file, just because I want to see what Splat sees and what it exports. I did write that tool on Thursday. It just dumps the header information, and so we can verify that that's all the same. So we expect VRAM to be the same. Text length is short. Let's look at W0. It's like it's 64 bytes short. Oh no, it's the same. Oh great. BSS length is different. So there's no BSS for W0, but there is, or sorry, there's 128 bytes of BSS for W0, but none for W1. We see the VRAM offset here. So again, you could have two weapons, so they need separate locations in memory. So let's update the VRAM offset. This is going to be plus 80. This is weapon 0, which is Eldritch is saying which weapon. It's a bunch of them. I don't recall which ones offhand. Turfing, Namakura, Gladius, Scimitar. So it looks like these are all like one-handed swords, like generic swords. The code is really simple. So I don't think that there's really any complicated effects or anything with this. Fist, yeah, Fist comes later, and it would make sense that Fist was weapon 0, but it's not. Okay, so we have our updated VRAM. Our BSS size, like I said, is 0. So that means our file... our file should be the same. That's right. I was wondering, why does data start at 700? Data starts at 700 because we have 80 bytes of the MetroWorks header that exists on the PSP version as well. I think this is good enough. Oh, I need to get the Shasam. Splat will give that to us. It'll say your Sha is wrong. You think it should be that. So, poor man's way of running Shasam. Let's add it to the checksum file as well. This is how we verify that what we're compiling is a match. Hey, thank you, Fabuous. Appreciate it. Appreciate the Prime subs. Do we have anything else to do? We don't have any BSS, and this is actually, so there's two things that I found with the first weapon that break assumptions in make config. And again, make config is a script that we wrote for this project. Since we know various things about how the Symphony of the Night files are laid out when they're built, we have 30-ish overlays and now 116 of these. It's a lot of repetitive work importing each one, and so make config takes the things that we know about the general layout and all that, and will create this file for us. Except in this case, we haven't done these before, so it doesn't support weapons yet. And one of the things that is assumed is that every overlay will have RO data. RO data is used for jump tables and switches. It's used for text like strings. And it can be used for other constants if that constant is more than just like an integer or floating point number. Floating point number, you know, a PlayStation fix, Konami fix. And I think that every overlay so far has had BSS, which is uninitialized data, which on the PlayStation is at zeros. It's just a huge section of zeros that fits the amount of BSS that was originally allocated. On the PSP, the loader does what is more optimal and to save read time from the disk, and they exclude BSS from the file, but then zero everything out in the BSS section. Unknown 169 starts the weapons specials definition. Oh, thank you. That's good to know. Appreciate it, Eldritch. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of things we need to go through, because I'm super guilty of this, but I'll go through and I want to decompile and I want to decompile and I want to get that 100%. I want to get a match. I want to get all the functions done, and then I don't go back through, and occasionally people will do this. They'll go back through and put meaning behind a lot of the things. We'll see things, and see the same fields over and over and over and think, oh yeah, that does that. And I've done it on the stream and never gone back and done it. Like, now I know what this field does, or I know there should be an enum because it's constrained to these values. And then we don't go back and do it because that's work. I'm here to have fun, not do work. But I really should. I really should. I do need to update this VRAM. Well, okay, so back to make config. The make config assumed every overlay has RO data, every overlay has BSS. This is the first one that I've ever seen that does not have BSS. And so we're going to get rid of the BSS section altogether because it just does not exist. The previous weapon was the first overlay that I had ever seen that does not have RO data. Most of the time, these overlays are gigantic and they have lots and lots of functions that are shared. Some of them are unused, blah, blah, blah. And somewhere in one of those functions is going to be text for debugging or something else. There's going to be a jump table for some large switch or some switch that has very sparse entries in it. Sorry, not sparse entries. A large number of not sparse entries. That's what I want to say. And so you kind of just inherently get RO data, but now that we're doing these PSP weapons, they're all very small, and they all will have unique things like this, where there is no jump table in here, there's no text. So there's no need for RO data. Apparently there's no uninitialized data either. So there's no need for that. So we should have enough though here to split this. And we'll get a new file. I'm going to put these files side by side because I want to see how similar this is. And what I expect... we have a bunch of include ASMs. At the end, we have this a function. I called it load, because that's what we call it in other overlays. And this is what does the mem copy. Basically, it takes this overlay, writes it to where it should exist in memory, and then off it goes. This final function down here likely is going to be the same thing. Our function 28 here is going to be this return, get weapon ID. It's going to be a return 0, and we can look at that function, and it should be like 3 assembly instructions, something pushing the 0 value to register V0, and then the JR instruction, and then probably a no-op. So let's look at that and confirm. And I expect this to be a return 0. Let's see. Funk. So we're not the 0 register. That's what the dollar sign is. This is a register. 0 register is always 0. It's adding the value 0 to the value 0 and putting the result in V0, which is the return register. And then the JR instruction does the return. So that is what I thought it would be. So that matches as well. And now the basically the function of interest is this F6F68 function, and we want to see it be exactly the same as this entity weapon attack. And if it is the same as entity weapon attack, then we may be able to share this file. The other thing that may or may not be different is the animation frames. I didn't think about the animation frames. Those may be different, and if they are different, we might have to think of a better way to do this. So right now we have all that data just in line. I would think that the hitboxes would be the same, but we can look at that as well. So let's look at the entity weapon attack. There's some things I need to do here first. We don't prefix these. We have macros that will do that for us. And the idea there originally was that if the layout of this file is the same between different versions of the game, we could use a single include ASM. So do I still have that other assembly file open? I don't. Aldrich says, I should upload our conversations of the definitions into Google Sheets. Complete breakdown of weapons, armors, weapons specials, sub-weapons, and spells. Sometimes we couldn't figure out exactly, but we have most of them. That would be interesting. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if you've looked through the weapon files. I'm pretty sure that they were all of the weapons were documented because we have the string tables, and maybe it's something that you guys already have in another form anyway. So like I said, I'm expecting this to be the same. The difference is going to be the hand ID if it's used. We're going to go grab this entity weapon attack, and we have to grab different all the global symbol declarations. Oh, that's not what I wanted. This workflow that I use for streaming is not a workflow that I use for anything else. So it's only muscle memory for the stream. Oh, that's interesting. Fabulous. Thank you for chatting. Appreciate you coming by. I think that we don't define. That's unfortunately something that I found with weapons. Some of our type definitions are wrong, and going to clean those up is going to be a huge pain. I don't really know what to do about it, except cry. I have another change that just made it in over the weekend, which was, oh yeah, these are weird too. They all have to be pre-declared because the array that defines them comes first. This seems like something that probably was generated. And somebody probably needs to go through and think about that. what would our tools look like if we were going to generate these? All right, so what differences do we have, if any? So in this case, it's none. I'd like 2 more beers. All right, so this, like I kind of expected, this was exactly the same. So it looks like it's mostly data. So the things that would need to change to get this to compile would be to map these symbols that we know are in the wrong place. Is there anything else that's going to prevent this from compiling right now? I don't think so, because I have the issue is going to be the C file name. So I think this is fine. So I'm going to try building this. Let's see if it works. I'm sure I missed something along the way, but we'll see. I didn't touch the right file. Thought I did, but I must have created something else. No, I didn't. No, okay. So this is interesting. Oh, did I edit the wrong file in some case? So I did something, and my something caused the other weapon to fail. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So what can happen is files, this may be what happened. The asset path is the same, and I was trying to make that work, and it just might not work. So asset path is used by Splat to export certain things. And so one of the things that it's going to export is the MWO header. And so in weapons right now, we're going to have, and actually that's not the worst thing. We're going to have this MWO header, and it's going to be different for the 2 different weapons. And so basically the last one wins, but there can be race conditions during the build as well. So what I think I'll do, and we'll see if this works. It might not, though. This is why I wanted to do this. Like, what is going to break as we go through this? Because we've not done anything like this before. I want to change the MWO header name to not conflict. This probably should be different anyway. So I'm going to call this W1000 MWO header. I don't know if it's going to affect this name, and I'm guessing that it will affect this name. So let's update that. And that should be fine. Let's try again. I'm going to get rid of that assets file. And we'll try again. Okay, so we do have the header going into this file as expected. We're not building it. So let's look at... This is the last thing I'll do. Yeah, so we're manually adding this path, and basically this is not our build. I was a little bit worried about this. Our build script is going to have to change to get this dynamically. I could change assets, and that was one of the things that we were considering doing for other stuff, but yeah, let's do one more thing while I have all this open. I want to look at the data and see if the data is significantly different. That won't be super easy to tell because we're gonna have to compare the C to assembly. But basically I want to see if these arrays look the same. So when I'm checking, kind of spot checking data like this, for the left or the right hand weapon, this was in SPIM didn't figure out to split these at 16-bit boundaries, so it was printing these as 32-bit values. So I was looking at the first pair and the last pair just to confirm that the data was the same between the PSP and the PlayStation. And so I'll do the same to compare the two different PSPs. Actually, I could just diff the file. Let's do that. It's not going to work perfectly because the addresses are going to be different, but it'll be good enough. So we should have, yeah, this data, and then the same thing, but for W1. And the name is slightly different. So yeah, these, this is that list of addresses. Those are going to be different. That's expected. These are the animation sets, and I don't know if I can tell diff to ignore let's do this. I don't want to do that. I want to open them up side by side. So, I could use actually I'll use vimdiff. That will give me the view that I want. So it's expected that these are going to be different. Oh, interesting. There is at least a byte, if not a word, at the start of this file. Maybe the hand ID, I don't know. Okay, so all these are different. It would be nice if those were aligned, but they're not. To get past all this sprite data, I'm expecting that to be different. Oh, that's all the data. Is that right? Oh no, everything else beyond that is the same. So this is good to know. So there is some value up here at the very front, some 1, and let's see if we can find what that is, where it's used. It is used in this function. My guess is it's the hand ID, but let's see if we can find it. It's this F7300. variable. Oh, I have to go back and Eldridge posted a nice spreadsheet. Appreciate the spreadsheets. Yeah, it is the hand ID. So hand ID is a different location. That is bizarre. That is weird. That is weird. Okay, I don't know why, but hand ID is... is it uninitialized? That's interesting if it is. So there would be BSS. It's uninitialized. No, it's not. So in one version of this, hand ID is the first thing declared, and then another one is the last thing declared. I don't get it. And I want to see where hand ID is defined. Looks like we have a macro. So we have the weapon 0 and the weapon 1 macros. So we would have to basically make a conditional compilation. If it's a weapon 1 macro, define hand ID up at the top and define it to be the value 1. Otherwise, and it is a 32-bit value. Otherwise, it has to be defined below as 0. That's at least what we see for that weapon 0 file. So I guess I'll leave all this here. I have to add the checksum, but that's the only thing that changes. And then we'll get back to oh, what did I do? Why did I say checkout? Why did I say checkout? Shoot. We're gonna get back to B06. What time is it? 12:03. So in my never-ending quest to make it easier for me to not screw up, I unified the build. So we have a build all target now, and I talked about this a few weeks ago on the stream, but now it's in master for everybody to grab. Build all will go through and build the US version of the game, the HD version of the game, and the PSP EU version of the game. Right now sequentially. I have a change set that's getting close to being done, where we'll do those in parallel as well. Altogether, there's about 3,000 files. It takes, for all 3 versions of the game, it takes around a minute on my box, probably faster on yours. And why does it think that it should build? Let me do a make clean. Let's try again. I don't know what made it. I did an underscore because it matched the other targets. I dislike underscores and commands. They're just an extra key that I need to type. I'd rather have a dash. I like consistency better than my own preferences, though. So we're going to build, and then while that's going, bummer. While that was going, I was going to look at oh, I forgot. Because I have the splat file in there, it wants to build this. If you have the splat config in the config directory, it wants to build it. It used to be that was driven by the checksum file. So if you took something out of the checksum, it wouldn't try to build it. But that's not the case anymore. And same thing here. I have the V06 config, and we don't need that. I like doing this, and the reason I added it to begin with is because we have different versions of the game, and so as you make changes in one version of the game, you want to make sure that those aren't affecting other versions of the game. In this case, there are some, it probably is assets, and so I should get this into CI as well, make sure that as people are adding new assets and configuring them, that they're not breaking other things, because it looks like there has been a regression since this was imported, where some shared asset is broken again. I'll go back through and fix that. So I did want to look at oh, I didn't look at the tabs. I think Eldritch told me that there were tabs, and I just didn't look at them. But look at all this glorious data. Wonderful. So I often mention this 116 number for weapons, but there's 169, 168 weapon IDs. So this is weapons, yeah. Oh, the index is interesting. The indexes don't correspond with where the weapon is. What does? Let's find what is in a weapon in weapon 0. So many weapons share the same implementation, and there's like different parameters that are part of the weapon that will change its behavior. It might just be something simple like how much damage it does, or like what palette to use, what sprites to use, things like that. So turfing is one of the ones that we want. Take me there. Oh, there it is. So we want something here that ends up being in the range of 0 to 58, and with the value for turfing to be 0. Do we know what these items? Oh, interesting. So this has a ISO address. Is this really what's in the data? Let's look for that. I was trying to find maybe a table that had this item in it, and I don't find that. So I'll have to ask Eldritch where this table comes from when he gets back. Yeah, so what I was interested in was so like Tyrfing, Namakura, Gladius, they should all have at least one field. Can I filter? Let me filter. Oh, if this was Excel, I would know how to do something. Oh well, I'm not going to look at it now. I will look at look for Nakamura. Namakura, sorry. So is the address for Tyrfing the same? Tyrfing was hex 58. I'm gonna grab my calculator. 58 is index 88. Showing up as cutlass. Oh, it's right above. So we need some value in here that is the same for these two, but not its neighbors. Namakura is a two-handed sword, but Tyrfing isn't. But they have the same implementation? I'm very confused. What's new? What's new? Okay, yeah, I don't see it in here. I was looking for ultimately what is doing the mapping to each of these overlays on the and I could go back through the code and figure that out. Oh, maybe it is this offset. So this is going to be different than on the PSP. This is a single file. ISO address. Do they really bake in the ISO address? So the ISO address is like what sector on the disk. I don't know if this is how it would work for the randomizer, because they do disk edits. But it shouldn't be the way that the code works, because you wouldn't know that sector until the game disk is burned, and by that point it's way too late for the compiler or anything like that. Oh, anyway, I'll come back to that one day. Let's go back to Richter. Let's see. We're looking for. So I failed last week to do cutscene, the last cutscene function. I'm not going to work on that again. Let's look at some of the things that we maybe don't have names for yet. We have a few that are probably known, a bunch that are likely known. Do attacker check input might not be bad. Let's look for the non-matchings. And I'm going to sort those. I'm going to look for something that's large-ish. This DC0, this is the one we had been working on. Just a few register issues left there. I think a couple instruction issues, but mostly registers. And when the instructions are fixed, the registers probably will be too. So I'm not going to look at that. The 3E8 function might be good to look at. It's mid-size. I'll try to find something more around 10,000. Let's look at this 2.8 FCO file. I'm not sure what the grouping of those is, and nothing has been done here. So we do have one function that did match something probably in Richter. No, it's a function in DRE. Oh, that's interesting. Let's look at duplicates. It's also in center. So it is a pure match, 100% match. So let's look at that and see what that is. Not expecting like a random stage function to show up. It's pretty simple. It's just changing. This unknown graphic struct, I think, was given a name in a recent PR. That PR hasn't been merged yet. It's not a terribly interesting function, though. How big was that? It was not very big. Yeah, I want something a little more complicated. Let's look at this 994 function. It's on the smaller side, but it is not a duplicate of anything that we've seen. But still in this this same file. I don't know what the significance of this file is, like what the boundaries are, but we will see what it is and see if we can decompile something new. Back to the PlayStation. I really like, I don't know, I feel more comfortable in general on the PlayStation than the PSP. GCC is just something I've used for, I mean, basically 25 years. So it's familiar, and I know some of the issues, some of the things that might happen. Most of these are actually all the globals. We know this should be a relatively simple one, knock on wood. So let's just get into it. So what I've done is taken the assembly that SPIM has found. SPIM goes through, and the boundaries for functions. You're going through a blob of data that's that came from the disk on a file. It's just binary data, but the way that MIPS functions are written, they typically start with a bunch of instructions that push things to the stack, and they especially for the way that they're compiled by GCC, they almost universally end with a jump return of the RA register and a no-op. Occasionally, this no-op will be an instruction to store a value to the V0 register if it works out that way. But the boundaries are pretty easy. A different compiler could choose, the reason that it's written this way is because you always have to restore the stack at the end. And so GCC makes one section just for restoring the stack and then returning to the caller. it could reproduce this every time it wants to return. Actually, all of this is the return to stack. But what it chooses to do instead is just do that once and have every time you would otherwise return in the code, it's going to jump to that end location. So it's pretty easy to find the boundaries. I say it's easy because I'm familiar with that, but if you were writing a disassembler, you might do the same thing. So I'm going to go through and rename some things. All of these globals are symbols that we know and have seen, and they should exist in the context as declarations. And so each one of these, what I like to do usually, in the way that I typically do this, is to just delete them. And I'm going to delete the forward declaration of the function as well, because the PlayStation, or GCC for the PlayStation, usually doesn't care. Now I get a bunch of errors because these variables aren't declared. Oh, I will need interactable. It's going to be an init. The other ones will exist in the context. Depending on what Symphony of the Night streams or channels you follow, Mozilla built a version of the game with the randomizer built in, which somebody asked a couple weeks ago, what would my my dream changes be? Hey, Spring Quetzal, good to have you back. Hope everything's going well. What would some of my dream changes be? And that was one of them, to build the randomizer into the game, and it looks like Mozilla was able to do that now, which is incredible. That means I think it's nice that you could go through and play the game and say, give me a randomized version. But I think the more important thing is being able to say, this is my seed, and put my seed into the game without having to generate a new disk. I think that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. We made ours out of balsa wood. We'll need cutscene flags. I think this is on side 32. I don't recall. So that gets us a little closer, getting all those. Let's figure out the rest of it. Our stack is a little off. Not sure why. There is more to be cleaned up here. Supreme Quetzal, you miss making straw bridges in the past because it would have helped you now, or because what kind of curated content would I like to make? Yeah, I've been talking about it for a while, but I really would like to distill a bunch of the stuff that we do here, or that I'm doing here, into like more well-produced content. One of my favorite channels that I watch pretty much weekly, because he posts about weekly, is MVG, Modern Vintage Gamer. And I think he does a really good job breaking things down and explaining them in layman's terms. So even if you're not familiar with the internals of systems, I think it's, if you like the way things work. So that's kind of in that style, but maybe a little deeper. Yeah, something along those lines, I think. Oh, bummer. That is a huge bummer. So Supreme Quetzal, these are YouTube comments. I don't have them on the screen because I'm lazy or dumb or something like that. Some combination of both. had his calculus test and missed the Strawbridge building lab in physics. That is a bummer. Yeah, those that is definitely fun to do labs with, especially if you can do them with friends. Hey, guest 73, good to have you back. All right, so we're pretty close, but not quite there. I always mention that if there's a 5 at the end, there's two things that could be happening. It could be a function name that is incorrect, and I just need to correct that, or another symbol name. But usually that means that there's something wrong. So I need to go figure out what's causing the odd error. Usually symbols come in pairs, and that ends up with an even number. And it's this here. So I screwed up the order of these up on. I'm going to change this to a less than, and swap the order. And I'm going to change this to a 40. And that was it. That's all that was necessary. So this matches now. Pretty straightforward one. All right, thank you. Appreciate the support. Yeah, when there's odd numbers like this, typically that means it's a greater than rather than a greater than that equals. I think this one should be done. Let's go check it out. Multiple definitions of cutscene flag. Oh, this needs to be marked as extern. And so we use common. Common is the default header file for Splat. When it's generating these files, it expects you to provide a common.h. Unfortunately, we've, I think, overused common.h places, and I would like to get it back to just things related to include ASM. So we just need to change it to something with a broader definition. These are both going to be extern, and that build's fine. I think I'm going to end a little early today. We got one V06 Richter function done. This is, it looks like so you do the Richter boss fight, and then I think you get pushed at the end of the Richter boss fight over to where the this could be one of two things. The end of the boss fight, or at the beginning of the boss fight, you might be pushed into a specific location in the room at the start when it loads, or at the end after the cutscene, you might be pushed to the left towards the warp to the reverse castle. That's what this is doing. So there's a virtual sim pad sim that the game uses when it wants to control the character for you, and it kind of overrides what your inputs would be, and that often happens during cutscenes or other situations where you need to be. So when you fight Dracula at the beginning of the game as Richter, or when you meet Death, you get into the room, and then it moves you to a specific location, and they have it basically. If you're left, I'm going to move you right. If you're right, I'm going to move you left. So that's what it looks like this function does. Where it's called specifically, I don't know yet, but that's what it looks like it's doing. So we got one done and looked at weapons. I'm excited about the weapon stuff because like I said last week, if you're interested in decompilation, that's a good place to start. We have all of that code decompiled already. It just needs to be mapped to the PSP, and it looks like I have to do some mapping for the other hand as well. And I'm still going to guess at least a week and a half, if not 2 weeks, before that, before I submit a PR for that. And once that's in, that's kind of relatively easy work for people to take on. You can go to soten.z.dev to learn more about the Symphony of the Night decompilation project and see the progress that we've made on overlays. And then go to Discord as well, or Discord. You can go to Discord. I'll probably go there this afternoon and just catch up on conversation. But you can go to GitHub and see the progress on the overlays that we've been working on. I'm not sure what's going on here with cell. I do know that we're missing a function. It must just not be a large function. It doesn't show up in 2 significant figures. I'm not sure. But we have all the overlays that we've been working on. I'm not sure why BO6 isn't showing up. It should be in there as well. But you can see how far along we are on certain things. We're getting close. About halfway done, I think. That's all I got for you. Appreciate everybody. I'm a contributor to the project. Lots of people. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants always. Appreciate Eldritch showing up. Nate, always good to have you. Fabrius, again, thank you for the Prime sub. If you want a Prime sub, if you're not using it for anything, hey, send it on over. I use anything that comes in to buy new versions of the game to decompile. Dig Down Deep roaming, always a pleasure. I have been wondering where Entropy Gravity Well has been. Hopefully he's doing okay. I know I want to say that he was going to be traveling to get married around this time, so maybe hopefully that's what he's doing. Otherwise, maybe I'll reach out to him and see if he's okay. Supreme Quetzal, good to have you. Guest 73, always a pleasure. And that's all I got. See you all tomorrow. Adios.